What is up, grappling friends? It is your friendly neighborhood BJJ podcaster, Rafa Esparza, coming to you on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. It is 1:47 Best Coast time, and I'm excited about today's show. I'm always excited, but I'm excited because this gentleman that we are going to have on today is a friend of the show. We've talked with him before, but he's got something really cool, really exciting that I will preview here in a second. But before I do, a couple quick reminders. One, if you like our show or you're new to our show and you want to see more of us, all you have to do is go and hit the like and subscribe button. You can check us out. We're at Grappling Hour on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, all of those good places. And we always love interacting with our friends and our fans because we do a lot of stuff. We just did a fight companion for the previous UFC card. That was a lot of fun with our friends over at Strength and Mobility. And this next weekend, we are doing a fight companion for the Royal Rumble. Now you ask yourself, is that grappling? The answer, yes. So let's go ahead and say a few more things. Number one, I want to remind you guys, we have so much content going on. Check out our backlog. But for right now, let me tell you a little bit about our guest here today. He's been on the show before, but when I transfer to this next scene, I want you to see exactly how professional he is. Engage. Check this out. Look at this man. He has developed a jiu-jitsu app that will help you, grapplers, yes, you, the weak, the people who aren't supposed to be strong, get better with your strength and conditioning, not just to help you get performance peaks for your competition, but also to make sure that you are prehabbing all of those injuries that you don't want to keep you off the mats in the future. I'm excited about this app because I want to ask him questions about how he developed it, how he came up with it, because dude's a big guy. And as a big guy, he's been known as, I don't know, the Juggernaut in some circles. He is the CEO, the guy behind it all of the Juggernaut Industries. And now he's bringing up Juggernaut BJJ for you guys to learn more for your own athletic training. Please welcome to the show, friend of the show, and soon to be friend of yours, one Chad Wesley Smith. Chad, how you doing, sir?
Thank you for having me there, Mr. Esparza.
It's good to see you, man.
I really like you had a very debonair looking photo there in the intro. I like that.
Thank you. Thank you. I try to look a little bit better, but I just noticed right now one of the cameras downgraded me, so I'm going to fix this real time. That's how you can tell we do things very quickly here on the show. Yes, I try to look a little bit, I always tell people I'm willing to be in a suit every day. I don't mind being in a suit, but it's either I'm in a suit or I'm in sweatpants. Like, those are the two extremes. That's it.
You're either all in or all out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me ask this, man. What have you been up to? Because I've seen, in our little preview photo that we just put up right now, we saw you now getting your purple belt, sir. How did that come together? When did you get your purple belt, man?
Purple belt was at our end of the year belt ceremony there at Gracie Baja headquarters in Irvine from my professor, Philippe de la Monica. So, I spent a solid, I got my blue belt February 2019. So a solid 2.5 years at blue belt with a pandemic and 2 surgeries in the midst of that.
Oh no, what were the surgeries, man?
First one was for my thumb. I did the first, that's as much as it bends actually. The first of those, Who's Number One, the Flow Grappling, that was here in Costa Mesa. And probably the first gripping sequence of it. The thumb just kind of bent down too hard. I guess I didn't notice it in the moment. But it ruptured the tendon off of my extensor tendon in my thumb. And I remember the match finished, and the week before that match, I had dislocated and ruptured tendon in this beautiful pinky here, and that's about all that one does. So because I had dislocated fingers on the brain, and Professor Philippe, at least in the moment, had fixed my dislocated pinky with a little tug for me. When my thumb was stuck like this, I couldn't extend it. I could bend it this way, but couldn't extend it. And I was like, oh, Professor, fix my thumb, do it like you did my pinky. So he's pulling on it, and he's like, I don't think this is the same thing. So they had to stick a pin in that for 6 weeks or something. So it was that was like February 2020.
Mm.
Then I went thumb surgery into gym being closed for COVID. So 2020, as I'm sure it was for many people, was a real hit or miss jujitsu training. And then right at the start of 2021, I had a back surgery, which I'd had herniated discs for 8 years from powerlifting and all that, and it just kind of got to be too much. So they went and cut out what I've been told is a record-setting chunk of disc herniation. Uh, a 9 millimeter thick by 42 millimeters, which is almost 2 inches
Mm.
long piece of that disc. But rehab, feeling great, training. So Philippe may have just felt bad for me. He's like, man, this guy goes for so long in lifting and doesn't have to have any surgeries, and now jiu-jitsu, he's messing his hands up and having surgery. We might as well give him a purple belt.
Okay, now, okay, I can't let that stand on my show because I've seen you compete, and one of my favorite things is I think after we did one of our first interactions for an interview, I happened to see you competing, and I was very impressed, man, because I had seen the clips, and I knew you were good, but seeing you compete in person, it's like it always puts a nice name, face, kind of a aspect to it. But for me, it's always a guest and what they specialize in component. And when you mentioned that you probably hurt your hand on a grip, I thought, yeah, I could see that because those grips look nasty, dude.
Well, I think it was probably because the guy whom I matched whose number one match against Nsima Inyang, who I was a blue belt, he was a purple belt at the time. He is so jacked that my hand, I think, just hit his iron like pec, and it couldn't handle it.
I mean, you know what, dude? It's just what happens when you see two people who very strong. Nobody ever talks about whatever the cartoons, the explosion happens. Like
Yeah.
nobody ever sees somebody goes to the hospital the next day is like, yo, this kind of finger doesn't work anymore, bro. Like, can we fix this up? But either way, even during the pandemic, I know you were still getting in some training. I know you had to adapt and do a whole bunch of different things. Everybody else did that, but I got to tell you, man, those little things that you see, like seeing your friends get upped in rank and stuff like that, that's the stuff that makes you happy when you're having struggles with your own training or you have hindrances or for me during a bulk of the pandemic after we got over the first half I started going back to work on shows, so all my friends who were ramping up their training again, I was like, oh, well, I'm at work, so
Yeah.
y'all rage on for me if you would. So I was living vicariously through that. Having said that, though, I want to get to starting on the actual app. So I've known you as a guy who's been a resource for a number of people, especially people who check you out on your videos. Your social media presence is really, really good. You have great instructionals on how to stay healthy while lifting. Now, that's one world. Telling us jujitsu people to lift is not an easy task. So, how is it that you've been able to transfer some of that energy towards so many of us who are told or believe, the way to get better at jujitsu is to just do more jujitsu?
Yeah. So, I've actually been involved longer in strength and conditioning for jiu-jitsu than I have in powerlifting, which I'm sure is surprising to a lot of people. But when I started Juggernaut Training Systems back in September 2009, I was still competing in track and field through the shot put. And as we started up this gym with zero clients to begin with, not something I'd suggest to other people, but just sort of started like cold calling places, and I was like, oh, I was like jiu-jitsu, MMA, that's really big in Orange County. Let me try and reach out to some people in that. So the first guy, OC Muay Thai, whoever owned that guy, was a real dick to us. That was the first ever like sales pitch we kind of did. So, spirits were low walking out of there. And the next place was a spot called Gigante Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which was here in Costa Mesa, just down the street from where I live now. And it says, yeah, come on over, tell me what how you think you can help. So I walk in to this 6'7", 250-pound Brazilian, Fabio Vilela, and tell him, I think I can make you stronger, get you in better shape, and help your jiu-jitsu. So I was like, I said, I'll train you for free, and if you like it, tell your students, tell your friends. Just me and him for maybe 2 weeks. Then after that, Ulpiano Malachias, who coaches Pedro Mourinho, is coming with him. Mikey Gomez, another GB black belt, was professional MMA fighter. Alexandre Santos, a lot of these guys. So this is October 2009. I didn't start powerlifting until October 2010, so a full year head start on that. And fast forward another 6 months or so from that first meeting with Giganchino, and then it's Otavio Souza, Felipe de la Monica, Kyron Gracie, all these guys, people coming like before Pans and Worlds. We'd have Victor Estima coming over, and then Romulo Barral started, a young purple belt Felipe Pena back then, Tusa, Roberto Alencar. So all these guys starting to come, Mario Hayes, and I just kept kind of refining things. And the whole time they're like, "Hey, Coach Chad, you got to train, man. You're gonna smash everybody." And I was interested in jiu-jitsu, but really just as a strength and conditioning coach. I didn't want to risk like hurting a shoulder or elbow or wrist or something and messing up competing in powerlifting and strongman, which I was doing at the time. But then in 2016, I did my last powerlifting meet and just kind of got to be, very complacent in my training, not training to compete in powerlifting. I'd always my whole life been training to compete in something, from football, track, powerlifting, strongman. And then one day I figured, I was like, hey, I wonder, about that jiu-jitsu stuff. And so contacted Professor Philippe, who I probably hadn't seen in a couple of years at that point, as pretty much all of our business had become focused around coaching powerlifting and weightlifting. Reached out to him. That was August 2017. Started out as a very out of shape, overweight, no stripe white belt. And I think it raised a lot of eyebrows as we're going through line, at the end of class, shaking everyone's hand, and they hear Professor Philippe say, "Coach Chad," and everyone kind of looking like, well, why is this guy coach? The same kind of reaction I think that had happened at some tournaments if people were asking for pictures with me because they knew me from powerlifting, and I'm hearing their buddies say, "Wow, why does he want a picture with a white belt?" But it's just been really fun since then. A great community. I get to be on the other side of the coach athlete relationship with Philippe, who is just in Souza, Romulo. So way back in the day, we would roll out jiu-jitsu mats in my gym and use like some specific training stuff as part of their conditioning. And in one of those, I passed, and I'm just making this worse even by talking about it more, but passed Romulo's guard. And there was only 3 people in the gym there. It was Romulo, me, Felipe Pena. And Felipe Pena starts like laughing and Rominho, 3 points, Coach Chad, 3 points, Coach Chad. And that's probably in like 2011. And for the last 11 years, I have yet to train with Romulo. I have trained at Gracie Baja Northridge with their competition group. But anytime it comes up, I'm like, "Hey, Rominho, you remember when I passed your guard? What's the score, Rominho? You and me, lifetime right now." And I know that I'm just digging myself a deeper grave, but yeah, it'll be fun while it lasted.
I mean, my bigger complaint to you is, did anybody tell you you don't need to make Romulo stronger? Because dude's already pretty good at jiu-jitsu. And, I say this because last Wednesday, as a matter of fact, I actually stopped by their competition class. I had a friend extend an invite, and he asked me at the end of the class, "How'd you feel?" And I go, "I'm good. Um, I'm I'm a little banged up." And he's like banged up. What do you mean? Like, are you broken? I was like, no, it's just my body knows we jiu-jitsu'd very hard today. And,
Yeah.
I'm just like a visitor there. And I'm looking around and I told him, I go, yeah, dude, I go, it's one thing to talk about jiu-jitsu with these people, but then, getting to train with the variety of people they had in that competition room where there are some big names and really good people. It was like, yeah, man, he runs a great room. Like, this feels like if I was competing at a high level, this is where I feel I would need to be.
For sure. Yeah, he's a beast. And even when he started training with me, and it was this like Gracie Baja competition group, and a lot of these guys were just coming over from Brazil at this point, moving here to open their schools, and they'd all train together in Irvine, and then come and lift weights with me at the time in Laguna Hills. So, I didn't know much about jiu-jitsu. I just knew like these are how long the matches are. This is how we need to be strong, and what the conditioning needs to look like. But I could tell that all the guys were like, "Oh, Homolo's coming this week. Homolo's going to come for the first time." And so it's a big group, 10, 12 guys, like mostly black belts, very accomplished, very, physically gifted, great conditioning, particularly. And Homolo comes and trains and in a very hard training group. And then we finish, and he's like, "All right," he said, "Coach," he said, "I want to train, but just you and me." He said, "Because they train hard, but they do not train hard like I train hard." And no one like took offense to that. No one was like, "Homo thinks he trains harder than me." And everyone was kind of like, "Oh, yeah, that seems about right."
I mean, yeah, dude, I haven't pulled this card yet, but I know I'm getting to that age where I probably will. Where I'm going to be like, hey, I'm a host. So I'd like the host version of whatever y'all are doing because I got to look pretty for the camera. And, it's the same thing whenever people are going aggressively for leg attacks. I always tell people, I go, in these confines, it makes sense. But when I go back to the adult world and I'm working on different shows, I don't know how to explain to people like, no, it's okay. My friend, he got me and I didn't tap. It's my fault. And they're like, well, what'd he do? Oh, he does this breaking mechanic where he breaks my knee and, stuff happens. Oopie doopie.
Yeah.
And they're like, that sounds like a dumb sport. No, I mean, it's pretty cool, but it is dumb. I'll give you that. So
Yeah.
let's talk about this then, Chad. How does it then transition from doing all of this work, building all of these relationships with people? Because to me, I kind of see you as the Gracie Barra like S&C guy. Like to me, that is how I perceive you in our
Mm.
space because I see you with them, and obviously they've had great results. A lot of them are known in their competition realm, so the results kind of do speak for themselves. I would ask this though: at what point do you start seeing like this need to start helping people? Because to develop this app, to me, it seemed like a missing component that I wasn't seeing in the jiu-jitsu space. There are a lot of people who are starting to dabble in creating apps, whether it's for yoga or whether it's for training videos that are trying to help you get better at jiu-jitsu. But yours, and I could be wrong here, is one of the first that I've seen as a strength and conditioning program that is designed specifically for individuals in jiu-jitsu. So how did that need arise, and where did you start dabbling with that?
Yeah, so the Juggernaut BJJ app, which we released in December, is the second app that we've created. The first being Juggernaut AI, which is designed for powerlifting, and the premise behind that was creating this individualized training for everyone. Basically, that if I had the time and energy to write a personalized program for every single athlete, how would I do that? And there's parameters, simply knowable things about athletes: age, gender, size, experience, strength, that tell me as a coach, this person is likely capable of recovering from more training and likely needs more or less volume of training to advance. Certainly, you probably can't do as much training now as you could 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and the 21-year olds in your class and the 45-year olds, they're in different situations physically, and that's because of age. That's because of accumulation of injuries. That's because of the job and stress they have outside of training. So in creating Juggernaut AI app and then now Juggernaut BJJ app, we use expert system artificial intelligence to recreate the decision making process of an expert, myself being the expert in that, to make those changes for the athlete so that 21-year-old, you know, purple belt competitor who wants to train 10 times a week with boundless energy does not do the same training as 45-year-old hobbyist who, trains jiu-jitsu 2 or 3 times a week and wants to just be able to do that a little bit better and, tap their buddy at school one time more than he gets tapped by him, but feel better, look better, perform a little bit better. So creating programs to address all of those, because jiu-jitsu is such an interesting challenge to design strength and conditioning for, especially compared to powerlifting. My other background is that because powerlifting is the same thing. It's squat, bench, and deadlift, 1 rep max. It's just about getting as strong as possible in these 3 very simple things. Where jiu-jitsu, you have so many physical demands that you need to develop. You have to be strong. You have to be explosive. You have to have endurance. You have to be mobile. All of those things, and then your opponent changes, and the proportion in which you need those could kind of change as well. So it's just a fun challenge for me to be able to create those different systems and make them adaptable to each individual. So as I'd see more and more programs in whatever space, whether it was powerlifting, weightlifting, or strength and conditioning for jiu-jitsu come out, it is always, here's this PDF that has sets and reps on it. But, Raf, if you and I bought the same program from, nameless coach, I won't name names here, but if you and I bought the same program, we would do the same program, but we do not have the same needs. So fixing that problem was really my main goal.
Sure. I mean, I'm picking up the Schwarzenegger encyclopedia for lifting, and that's all I need, bro. That information still the most relevant, especially for my body. I think of it like this because I'm going to give you a little bit of what I've been up to since we talked. So last time we chatted, I was asking you questions about lifting, how you integrated it into your game, all those sorts of things. And during the pandemic, when I wasn't training as much and I'm getting older, I started adding strength and conditioning into my realm. And I've gotten compliments as a result of it. But I was doing it not for necessarily the aesthetic. Don't get me wrong, that feels great. But I was like, dude, I'm getting older. I can't go back to jiu-jitsu when we have all this time off and expect my body to just be okay. Like, I'm getting to a point now where I want to be in front of those injuries. I want to be in front of those things. So that really, it separated my mind into 2 things, which was, number one, does this app work for both competitor and hobbyist, and how is the fun in breaking those 2 apart? Because you're mentioning how, yeah, of course, there's the automated aspects of it, but there's also a system building that you're doing that's helping to guide it. So what are those challenges, and what does that feel like now that you have this system where you can see it and you can kind of work with that?
Yeah. So, in terms of the different goals and the competitor or hobbyist, there's 5 different styles of programs in the app. Right now, we have a strength focus program, a speed power focus, an endurance focus, a tournament prep program, and then what we call the lifestyle program. So for those first three, the strength, speed, power, and endurance, yeah, I think everyone who trains jiu-jitsu, they feel that they are probably more deficient in one area than the other. They're either feel like they're getting smashed, they're not explosive enough to complete a takedown or to win in the scrambles, or they're getting gassed out. So for either a competitor or a hobbyist, choosing any of those first three, really the area that they feel most deficient in, is going to be appropriate, because there's still components of the other areas in there. It's just more emphasized on whichever they choose. And then the tournament program is, I guess, more self-explanatory in that if you're going to be a great jiu-jitsu competitor, you need to be very well-rounded in your physical development. And when we know this date, you need to be in your best shape, all around. They can create a periodized plan around, pointed towards that date to be as ready as possible, so that people can put their best performance forward on that mat that day, or that weekend. And then the lifestyle program, that one was really created with the hobbyist, with the recreational jiu-jitsu athlete, with the masters athlete or competitor in mind, because it's a little bit of everything all the time. It's rotating between strength, muscular endurance, explosive exercises, a lot of mobility mixed into it. For a lot of the guys who are, guys that I train with at Gracie Baja headquarters, they're, mid 30s to mid 40s. They've got a regular 9 to 5 job, maybe a couple kids. They train jiu-jitsu 2 to 4 times a week, and they want to look a little bit better, feel a little bit better, avoid some of the wear and tear that comes with hard training. So that's how that program was created for them.
Good on you, because so many of these things that we see in the jiu-jitsu scape are usually just geared toward, are you competing? Here you go. And listen, dude, like when I show up to that competition class, it's like I'm visiting. Like the next time you see me, which will probably be what, 4 or 5 weeks from now, my body will have just recovered from showing up this one time. So, I went up and I shook everybody's hand, and I was, I was going over to Humlo, and I'm like, I'd love to do an interview. And he's like, oh yeah, of course, come back, come back. And I go, okay, you say that, but like, also I will show up. It's just not going to be next week. And he's laughing, and I go, okay, good, good, good. But to me, when I saw that you were putting this together, again, as the hobbyist, and I don't know that I speak for everybody here, I see something like this, and there is almost an apprehension of like, no, I'm not trying to be a world's athlete. I don't know that that's going to speak to me. But looking at the photos and getting a little bit of the look at what you sent me, I was looking at it and I go, oh, okay, so he did break this down, and there is some differentium between that. How long did you spend kind of developing that, or were you able to just take parts of what you had for your actual Juggernaut training AI that you were developed before in adapting it to this?
So that brings up, I guess, a couple interesting points. The first thing, and something I want to touch on, is that Juggernaut BJJ app are not powerlifting programs. They are programs for improving jiu-jitsu performance. And that is a very important distinction. I've actually had a video maybe 2 weeks ago on our YouTube about the 5 biggest mistakes in jiu-jitsu strength and conditioning. And one of those I see people making it all the time. And like the Reddit BJJ page is always, every week has like a strength and conditioning mega thread kind of deal. And there's always people suggesting, oh, you should do this program, do that program. And they're talking about powerlifting programs, or they're talking about weightlifting programs. And coming from a powerlifting background, being one of the best powerlifters to ever live, I can tell you powerlifting does not help your jiu-jitsu that much. Like being strong helps, sure, but increasing the squat, bench, and deadlift, or snatch and clean and jerk as the primary objective of your training is not the most efficient way to boost your jiu-jitsu performance. because it's just more than that. It's more than 1 rep maxes. And the training in Juggernaut BJJ reflects that. So in terms of porting stuff over from Juggernaut AI, which is powerlifting, and then the secondary power building, is like powerlifting and bodybuilding together. Some of the look of the app and some of the code from the development side is coming over, and the ideas about individualizing training based on these biological factors and how much jiu-jitsu the athlete is training. And then every day there's what we call a readiness questionnaire, a readiness check-in, where you say, how much did you sleep last night? What's your kind of mood, motivation to train today? How sore are you? What's your diet been like over the last 24 hours? All of those help inform our expert AI system. All right, does this person, feel good or feel bad today or feel normal? So in the same way that when someone walks into my garage and in 2 hours, like Naaman Gracie going to be coming into the garage to train for his next fight, and say, well, how was sparring this morning? And when they come in, oh, hey, coach, man, I'm dead today. And it's like, all right, well, we got to make an adjustment and give you a little bit less, or they feel good. And days where we can push it a little bit more, it's making those adjustments in the same or very similar way that I would as a human coach. And that's just such an important aspect of training, that guys get locked into, the sets and reps written down on this piece of paper, and they think that they have to do that even when something hurts or when it's an appropriate time to make a change. So the programs in there are a reflection of the last 12 years of strength and conditioning for jiu-jitsu coaching that I have done. If you looked at what I was having guys do back in 2009, 2010, and what they do now, it's really, really big changes. It's probably the most notable of which is I much more let the jiu-jitsu be the conditioning. And if we're doing extra conditioning beyond that, it's pretty low intensity. But we're in the weight room to learn how to produce more force, to be able to stay healthier, and leaving the conditioning part for the mats, where we used to do these really hard, kind of crazy conditioning circuits back in the day, which now when I look at them, and I've never in my time training jiu-jitsu been training like more than 5 sessions in a week, and those guys were doing probably 10 or 12 jiu-jitsu sessions in a week. And I was like, man, and then you guys were doing this on top of it. Like, that's crazy.
To me, I think of it like this, which is, there's a lot of stuff I think we all look back on and go, that wasn't smart. We did what we had to do at the time. I would also ask, is there, because again, I'm thinking selfishly, is there a component that yells at you? Because I have a strength and conditioning guy that I work with now, and I hate, I'm not a weights person. The whole reason I do jiu-jitsu is because I don't like it. And I don't like even the aesthetic of being in a gym still feels weird to me to work out. But I've given him a moniker, which is, I hate weights, but I like you. And because you're asking me to do it, I will do it, but I don't love it. And then I think we've built in our relationship where if he tells me to do something, I'm just like, ugh. And he kind of gives me this. And I just think automated programs don't have time for that. Automated programs don't have a little button that just go like, yo, bro, nobody cares. Work harder, kind of a thing. So is that something that you would ever think about doing? Because I just feel so many of these goons are like me. You get the people who are tournament motivated. They see a goal in there. But people like me, I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't feel like this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much extrinsic motivation that the app can provide. Maybe I can, if you start rating on your readiness rating, like low motivation to train today, maybe there'll start to be like a video of me that pops up that's just like, come on, man. I'll talk to the developers about including that.
Thank you. I don't take a ton of money, but just enough. I would say, though, as a result of that, To the more realistic question I have here, which is I ended up getting this during the pandemic, the little whip strap. And I got to
Mhm.
tell you, the things that you're asking to input, um, similar but different. But I can say on the similarities, the thing that really helped me was I noticed during the pandemic because I wasn't training, I was getting a lot of, I think my cholesterol like went up a little bit. And I remember telling people, I was like, yeah, I know this is expensive. I hate this. You know, I hate having to pay a monthly subscription for what just feels like a watch. But the reason I did get it is because I could put on that sleeve. And when I could do that sleeve, I could keep an idea of my training, what it felt like. I could look at, especially the sleep patterns. Those were huge for me because it was the first time I had something, and it didn't yell at me, but it definitely told me, like, yo, bro, you see this right here? This is not good sleep. And I go, oh, yeah, maybe that's why my body's junk. So I like that those things are integrated into your program. Do you foresee something that you could potentially be doing that would integrate something that we could wear? Because I got to tell you, man, no offense to these people, they're not sponsors, but like, you do it, I'll drop this in a second. Because to me, I like the heart rate. I like all of those things. Those were very good health monitors and measures. But to me, I'm like, dude, you're so like it feels like it's asking me to put the stuff in, and it's almost like maybe that's where it would go, but I don't know that. So I just wanted to ask, is that something that is you're thinking about at some point, or are you more so just intrinsically on the idea of this user inputted data still is going to be king for a bit?
Yeah, I mean, wearable integration is definitely something we have planned, though it would not be, it would be very unlikely that we're be creating our own wearable
Mm,
because there's so much good existing
yep.
technology, whether it's Whoop or Apple Watches or Fitbits or all that kind of stuff, and just heart rate monitors for some of the conditioning pieces in there. That is something that'll happen in the future for us. Yeah, at this point, it being a manual entry and serves the same purpose. I think that there's kind of an accountability in that too. When it asks you how much did you sleep last night, even if you're getting that information from a Whoop or whatever, to actually have to type it in, and it gives that extra moment of accountability of like, ah, man, I'm marking the low, a low rating here. That with all of the questions and the readiness ratings that we use, it's kind of making the person reflect as they go. Am I marking high, things that are going to lead to high readiness and the good stuff that I'm doing, like Professor Philippe, who's just a beacon of health. He's always up in four or fives because he sleeps great and he's got great diet and it's consistent and he's excited to train all the time. Where other guys are like, oh man, I had a couple glasses of wine with my wife last night, and we're gonna mark that. So, but we also have some other check-ins with that as well, besides just like the end of a lifting session on a 1 to 10. How hard was that? And also these where you can check in your BJJ sessions and tell the system, all right, I trained yesterday for 90 minutes. I did this many live rounds, and I felt like that round was, or that day of training was a 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, whatever it was. And that piece of being able to quantify what is hard and easy jujitsu training, I think is such an important step for especially people that want to compete, to be able to manage their training effectively. I see way too much in jiu-jitsu and MMA where all the sessions are very similar and they're all hard, basically, or the idea that we're just going to get a bunch of tough guys and put them in a room together, and whoever comes out the other side of it, is going to be a good competitor. Where being able to look at, whether it's heart rate or HRV or time and the combination and average heart rate of what, and then subjective rating as well of, I felt like today's training was really hard, and then I look at this data from my Whoop or whatever that supports that, so I can then begin to quantify when I have this average heart rate for this long, that's a 9 out of 10 session. or a 6 out of 10 session. And so what else made the 6 out of 10 session was that more drilling, was the 9 out of 10 more specific training, more live training, and be able to create a better, weekly, monthly training cycle, competition prep, where it's not just I train hard. Then I felt like shit. But planning out, today is going to be hard. I'm going to make this day more of a 6 out of 10. Then we can be back up to 9 and kind of wave that training to facilitate more recovery in a program. That's a big piece I think a lot of competitors are missing out on.
I guess all of this is to ask because, again, I do like Whoop, not sponsored by them, blah, blah, blah. But I can tell you one area you can definitely beat them on. And this is as somebody who, you train jiu-jitsu, so you understand this. And I've raised holy hell about this. They have responded to me on this. But this is their icon that they have for jiu-jitsu. Now, listen, guys, I don't know what you think jiu-jitsu is, but I have never done this to another jiu-jitsu practitioner in my life. Like, I'm not even trying to triangle somebody. They think that in jiu-jitsu, I'm like, hey, you ready to go? Slap and roundhouse. Like, I've messaged them. I've been like, as a person who kind of understands what this is, please don't encourage this. This is not what we do. So I'm just saying, even by having one icon with somebody just grappling, you would already win. So I think it's an area that I've informed them. Their social media team knows. They've responded to it. They've been very nice. But I don't think they picked up how serious I'm about. Like, no, but for serious, a different icon. Literally pay someone $10.
One guy standing up and the other guy sitting down with a little speech bubble that says, climb atop me and meet your doom.
Exactly. Absolutely. If you know it, again, it's market, it's economy. You would win in that sense. I just feel like every time I see that, it makes me feel like what I think Elvis thought he was doing in the 70s. So it has me thinking every time I put in on that, I go, oh, I Elvised very hard today. Having said that, I mean, there is something very cool about that. And a lot of this has been good for my personal development. Again, not a athlete, but as somebody who does train and does it recreationally, this information became pivotal to me. The one thing I do notice, just in terms of my user input data, was just every time I would put in and it asked me, like, how'd you feel your workout today? I can never say it's that good. I just go like, it was all right. You know what I mean? Like every time it goes right on a scale of 5, I feel like I would be the worst person to give you the intel back because every exercise I think I've ranked like this. It was pretty medium hard. I was passable. And every time I'm like, that can't be true every single time. But every time I think about it at the end of the session, I just go, ugh. So that does become very, very valuable information. Is there an extra hidden benefit to this because you're a guy who's based in Southern California, but you have a reach that's far outside of this scope? Does there become an extra feeling of like you're able to help more people and get more people on better health practices? Is there a feeling towards that has become either a primary or like a secondary focus? Because let's be real, you don't always have the time to spend physically with people, but now you're expanding that reach to a lot of people who really sometimes earnestly don't know what to do for their conditioning and their health.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, in creating our first app, Juggernaut AI, that is a big premise behind it is, I had fixed time and energy and for the detail that we could create in the programs in the app, which in the Juggernaut AI app, the initial, it's about 20 intake questions to begin with, and that creates a program with about 15 quadrillion, as 15 with 15 zeros after it, permutations to it that continues adapting. Right now we have just over 9,000 people that are using that app, and I have no interest in trying to write 9,000 powerlifting program. So I've been very happy to be able to bring that to such a wide audience. And jujitsu and the jujitsu community is just an underserved community when it comes to good, effective strength and conditioning information. Um, whether it's just not thinking that it's a part of what they need to do, or it tends to be kind of a dogmatic community in a lot of training and nutrition circles. There's people who are there's all about kettlebells, or they're all about yoga, or they're all about insert whatever you want here. That I think what we have is much more well-rounded. That the information that they can find about jiu-jitsu strength and conditioning on our YouTube channel is much more descriptive rather than prescriptive. That we're explaining the why, and so many of these questions are, well, it depends. And if they're willing to listen for 5 minutes, I can explain what it depends on. But yeah, being able to bring that to people who they weren't like the guys who I coach in person, who have access to an in-person coach, whether that's geographically or financially, or just from a time standpoint or whatever. But yeah, to be able to get something where everyone around the world can get a program that's tailored to them and continues to adapt to them, is a very exciting thing for us. We're going to get the app translated into Portuguese fairly soon as well. So looking forward to that.
Again, I tried to tell you earlier, I just want to see if I can ram this one home. But especially when you start adapting this into the Portuguese, I think there's a hidden value of yelling at them. Because I think that, and again, I don't want to misspeak for people who are from the Brazil, but there is a little bit of boa. And like, if it's not yelling at you to porrada harder, like, I don't know that they're going to feel like, I don't know how much porrada to put into this. The app needs to tell me. There needs to be a scale. So
5 pojadas, 4 pojadas. The main suggestion that I've gotten in that regard is to our exercise demo videos, because every exercise in the program you can see a little demonstration. Is they seem to be a big fan of the more Kavala based video demonstrations rather than when it's me demonstrating. I don't know there, but that might be something I work in as well.
it's okay. Just hire a nice. We just call him a fitness model for the intents and purposes of this. So you can just be like, hey, let's bring in the fitness model over here. It's cool. We're just regionally doing this for them. No big deal. As we've said this though, we've danced around the idea of a pandemic. From your side, how much did you see people putting a renewed emphasis on their training in general and also their strength and conditioning after the pandemic? Because again, maybe this is a selfish question, but it's something that I noticed that was important for me to maintain a good sense of health, even as things were very, very crazy and uncertain. So did you find an influx of people from there, or did you just find maybe the same people being consistent and saying, I got to transfer some stuff over?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a global sense, there's been more attention to health and wellness for people. Um, in terms of like the home gym boom, that way more people taking that into their own hands, and whether it was paying 5 times the normal price on Craigslist for a pair of dumbbells, they were getting something that they could take care of that part of their life, um, for themselves, and not be beholden to gym closures and all of that. And then I would like to think, I would hope that people who maybe, if they either couldn't go to jiu-jitsu because their school was closed, or for whatever extenuating health circumstances, they didn't feel comfortable going to the opposite of social distancing activity, that they picked up the strength and conditioning part, um, in replacement of it, or as a complement to maybe some reduced training load that they were having to do. But or if it was just that working from home kind of afforded them more flexibility in their schedule to now throw in 2 or 3 days of lifting on top of their jiu-jitsu.
Understood. And there's a lot of, I think what I learned the most during the pandemic was to try and have an appreciation for what it is that everybody needs to do to stay healthy. Because don't get me wrong, nothing would make me happier than capping on some people doing some Peloton. But I also was like, this is best as we got. If this thing goes any further, I'm probably gonna have a Peloton on my own. So I'm not gonna insult anybody who's trying to do better. But I want to, because that stuff's funny. And then I think about the fact that, oh no, I really have chosen the worst sport during a pandemic to do. Like, there's no getting around that. Like, I have a mother-in-law who's a nurse, and she would just be like, "Are you doing that still?" And I go, "Yeah, occasionally." She go, "Okay. How is that safe?" And I was like, what isn't? I was like, what isn't safe at this point? I go outside, and, you do the best you can. A lot of times you were doing small training. A lot of times that's where I started doing strength and conditioning. I did a little bit of boxing. I just think people did the best that they could to get around that. But I am happy to hear that more and more people not only are getting back to their jiu-jitsu training, but that I think one thing that's a positive, and at least in my story, was I used it as an opportunity to make better improvements on a lot of different things, including now doing those kinds of exercises that you demonstrate. One of the things that was really great about looking through your program was I could go to my S&C guy and I was like, "Oh, hey, you had me do this. I get it now. I didn't understand. I just thought it was really annoying you asked me to do this." So there was a lot of very positive interactions that I've had. And I will say I do feel a little bit better in terms of keeping the maintenance on the vehicle recently. So I think that's really good stuff. So we'll come back to this. I did want to ask a couple other questions that are less app-based because you're a guy who also appreciates the craft beers. I did want to ask, what has been in your recent rotation for beers? Because we all had a lot of time recently, and I don't know about you, but I definitely, a lot of beers happened in my world. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to know what has been in your rotation recently that you've truly enjoyed on the beer side, sir.
So my girlfriend had gotten me a subscription kind of deal through Alpine Brewing, which makes like Duet and Nelson and some of my favorite beers. And when they do their monthly limited edition release, I've picked up quite a few from there. But my favorite brewery, like as a local one, is Green Cheek, which they've got one here in Costa Mesa, one in Orange. Great food, incredible beers. They're really good. I think that one of the Alpine ones I liked a lot was called Exponential Hoppiness. That was a very good one. And then Green Cheek. And Green Cheek has a ton of really good ones and really, really good food at their little spot. But yeah, pretty much any of the Green Cheek, double, triple, IPA, all the good stuff.
That's fair. And as I mentioned before, it is always not just nice, but it's a good sign when your trainer does something like actually has a beer. Like, you're not on here being a lush and getting wasted every single second of the day. But I am more prone, maybe just for my style, to be like, oh, that guy lifts and he also drinks beer? Yeah, I'll do his program. I trust him because I think that's the lifestyle I'm trying to lead too. So every time I hear those things, and it was a nice addition to when we were talking the first time, is I was sitting there and I remember during the pandemic, everybody tells you to pick one or two businesses that you could help and support. And mine was my local brewery. I was like, nope, they will not go out of business. Here, take this money. And they were like, we are happy to take your money right now. So I think there was a lot of very interesting beverages that I've had in the past year that I probably wouldn't have had. My other thing for you is this. In the past year, I know you mentioned you had some surgeries. Did you also have to curtail part of your own competition once? Because I'm sure maybe in its own way, the pandemic might have given you some time to heal up some stuff. But what can we expect next from you on the competition side? Do we see you getting out there competing soon? Did the pandemic make you have to take a little bit of a break? What's happening there, sir?
For me on the competition side, we'll see. I don't, maybe some masters competition. I've only competed it as an adult this far in jiu-jitsu. Now at purple belt, that's probably it's a bit of a taller order because they're better and I'm a little bit older and more surgery scars on me. But the last year, let's say year and a half of training jiu-jitsu post hand surgery. So the last time I competed, February of 2020, I actually started to kind of enjoy it more because I'm not getting ready for competition. So I don't feel like we always got to just push like on my A game, and this is how I'm gonna can win tournaments. But being able to just train for training and kind of do things that, yeah, it's probably not what I would do in a tournament or how if I had to win this match, I would try and do it, but get to get a little bit more into the art side of things. So yeah, right now I'm training jiu-jitsu usually 3 times a week. I'm lifting 3 times a week. I'm playing golf, once or twice a week, and I'm a very professional hobbyist, I'd say at this point. So competing in jiu-jitsu, if I'm training well and it's 3-4 weeks out from a tournament and I was like, hey, that sounds fun, then I'll sign up and do it. But um, in terms of I'm going to plan for, create this big annual training plan and point my training at these specific tournaments, I don't think that that's something for me right now. I'm just having fun doing jiu-jitsu with my friends and trying to not let Philippe choke me out too many times when we train together. Take that as a personal win. Like, oh man, he only got me twice this round. That's good. But yeah, just having fun training, trying to feel good and learn new stuff.
No, no, I welcome you on this side. It is way better. I promise you. Like, listen, dude, I show up like one of the old Muppets in the fucking balcony, and I literally just have the best time of my life. And it is so much better than showing up. Like, dude, if y'all want to compete, go do it. I'm there with you. I'm in training sessions with you guys. I will coach you if you need to. However, this food is delicious. Oh, this acai is good too. Do I want a beer? I can have one if I want. Okay. So I just tell people, I'm like, dude, there's a reason why y'all see the best and funnest side of me. It's because if I was competing, I would not be talking to you. I would not be pleasant. You don't want that one. You want this one. This is like Uncle Raph shows up and is like, hey, listen, hey, buy that. That's on me. You're good. So I say that. One thing before we start to close up here that I wanted to know, because I think about this every once in a while as a jiu-jitsu peer that does some coaching with some friends. But I always wonder if the same thing holds true for you on the strength and conditioning side. Is that if I see somebody that I'm very impressed with, every once in a while, I'm like, dude, if things were different, I would love to coach that person. Do you, as a strength and conditioning guy, whether it's MMA, now your reach is really going to that as well, too, as you mentioned with some of the clients and people that you're working with and seeing them crush it in UFC and Bellator. But are there people that sometimes are out of your scope that you look around and you go, man, if I had a crack at that, I feel like I could really make some improvements. Does that happen on your side ever?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been fortunate to get to work with a exceptionally diverse clientele. I mean, I would be hard pressed to think of someone who has coached in the strength sport, combat sport, NFL players, of Team USA bobsledders, Team USA track and field. So really all over the place in terms of different sports. So I love that challenge of different, getting to work with athletes from different sports that have unique demands to them. So yeah, there's always people I see, and then people who are in those sports who I think are succeeding sometimes in spite of what they're doing. That I'd be like, man, I'd really help that person out. But yeah, that's always a fun, whether it's a real challenge or just like a thought experiment of how to improve what people are doing.
I feel that. I so many times when I'm watching people, especially at jiu-jitsu competitions, I'm always like, I don't know that guy, but man, I kind of want to see what they work with, or how they do certain things, or pick their brain, or collaborate with them. So it turns out one of the nicest parts about doing a show like this is you just kind of interview them and you go like, tell me about your thing. And then they literally describe their game. And then, sometimes we will train. I try to keep an open invitation to everybody who comes on the show. Like, happy to train with you guys. Don't think I'm trying to murder you. I like to, as a show of camaraderie, I like to be like, hey, we can train. You're more than welcome to, especially if I'm doing jokes, because I do a lot of jokes, and I do a lot of jokes on people that we know, some that we don't. So I give them the fair ability to beat the shit out of me should they choose to take that up. But I do find that fascinating. So as we start to circle right now, sir, I would love to give you the floor. What I'd love for you right now, obviously you can shout out your stuff and tell people where they can find you. You are very popular for all of your training, but I think it is important that people know where they can kind of make improvements on the jiu-jitsu side for neglected areas, or for those areas they want to target. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn it over to you. I got the video playing on loop. So this is your pitch. This is you telling the people who are like me, lazy, or people like me who are old, or people like me who maybe say, you know what, I want to win Masters this year. Let's see what's going on. Reach out to those people, tell them why they need to do your program, and tell them, exactly where they can find it and what they need to know about it, sir.
Yeah, so they can benefit from my decade plus of experience in the strength and conditioning for jiu-jitsu by using the Juggernaut BJJ app, which will give them individualized training. So whether they are that 22-year-old, killer getting ready for adult worlds, or their local masters tournament, or anything in between, it's going to adjust their training appropriately for them. It's going to, in the macro sense of the overall design of the program. And then every day as they tell it, basically, do they feel good? Do they feel bad? It's going to make those minor adjustments day to day, and then keep track of those trends over time to see, all right, are they consistently feeling good? Then let's give them a little bit more, a little bit more. Are they consistently feeling beat up? Let's reduce the load of this training. They can learn more about the why behind all of everything that goes into the app at the Juggernaut Training Systems YouTube channel. I've got a playlist specifically for strength and conditioning that's covering everything from program design, how to organize your training, like when should you lift, when should you train jiu-jitsu, conditioning, mobility, best exercises for jiu-jitsu, injury prevention and rehab ideas in there. And then they can check out the Juggernaut BJJ app at juggernautbjj.app. And they can use code Grappling Hour to save themselves some money signing up for that, or check out the free trial as a 1 week free trial that they can use as well. And that's for Apple and Android. And then they can follow me at Chad Wesley Smith on Instagram, or at Juggernaut Training.
And let's emphasize this, people. If you're going to use anybody and any kind of code, you better use mine. If you're watching this on a different channel in an interview with him, that's fine. But if you're one of my people and I hear that you use somebody else's code, dead to me. Just completely. Get out of here. Chad, I did notice that we got a question here. And this comes from a gentleman or a person, don't know, named Hyper, who wrote, Hi, Chad. One question. Do you think it is better to separate power and strength training in blocks or incorporate both as some kind of GPP work?
Yeah, so this is getting to the idea of like periodization for jiu-jitsu. So if we're getting ready for a tournament, we can, organize all the training correctly to get to that point. So because jiu-jitsu is a sport of multiple demands, um, doing more of a concurrent kind of training, so training for multiple qualities at once, is going to be more appropriate for jiu-jitsu, but the proportion of energy that you dedicate to each of those is probably going to change over time. That could change based on your individual needs as an athlete. Like if someone is particularly strong but slow, they're going to bias more towards the power and speed training. If they're, great endurance and very weak, great strength, poor endurance, you can change the proportion of the training. But as you get closer and closer to competition, you want to do training that looks more and more like that competition. So moving, from more like general weightlifting, moderate reps, submaximal intensity, to then more maximal strength, to then more explosive strength, and then moving the conditioning part of training from more general aerobic base conditioning to then what I call alactic power, which is basically how fast, high, far can you go in this one explosive bout, to then we call alactic capacity. So how well can you repeat those explosive bouts with minimal rest periods in between? Because that's a lot more what jiu-jitsu competition is going to look like. And then I have a YouTube video called Periodization for BJJ, I think is the name of it. At some point, in 1,500 YouTube videos, I think I've lost track of what they're all called. Yeah, periodization for BJJ strength training is what it's called. So you can get a more in-depth answer there, or you could just use the tournament prep program in the Juggernaut BJJ app, and it'll just do all the thinking for you.
Listen, you do more thinking for me. I'm not. I think too much on a billion of other things. Thank you, Hyper, for the question. I appreciate that. Chad, I want to say this, man. It is always a blast catching up with you. We've missed you. I know there was a pandemic. We haven't talked for a little bit. But if you remember, before the pandemic happened, I think I was telling you we're in the process of being able to take this beast on the road. I don't know if you know the trajectory of this, but we had just started going to breweries with guests.
Okay.
And I was really excited because January of 2020, I took out one of my friends who's a huge IPA fan. He was about to fight in February. So we made it. So 8 weeks before he was about to fight, I took him to a brewery. We did a whole segment. And I was like, dude, this is great. And then the pandemic happened. And I go, I can't go to a brewery with you. So now we have just started ramping those things up, and I think that would be a great segment to go with you. I would love to come down, and as I mentioned, we always open up the training options for those there, but I would love to come do a training day and then go catch a beer and do another interview and maybe catch up on what is new and what has been the great success of the folks that are joining over at Juggernaut BJJ.
I would love that. Thank you very much, Raf.
Not a problem. All right. Thank you so much, Chad. As he gets on out of here, I'm going to remind you guys. That's not the right. There we go. That's the right one. Publish. I'm going to remind you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you see here, check us out at Grappling Hour. And if you do use Chad's app, use the code Grappling Hour to get, some percentage off, but also to help the show and to help him. Because listen, guys, that's a really cool thing he's doing for you. And I would love to hear success stories on if you are finding that it is helping your jiu-jitsu and your strength and training. Before we get on out of here, reminders. Follow us, subscribe at Grappling Hour, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, Twitter, all of those places. And we will be back on Saturday for a Grappling Hour Fight Companion for the Royal Rumble. I think you guys are going to like this one. We have a lot of nonsense. And we might just do a sign up and a giveaway for that. So that way, if your Pokemon wins, you win. So some of you who don't like pro wrestling might suddenly be cheering for Randy Orton like it's nobody's business. So we'll leave it at that. But for right now, my name's Rafa Sparza. It's been a great day for grappling. We'll see you back on the mats.